All right, this video is to go over the rest of the packet tracer for the NET-100 class. In a previous video, I went over how to configure the subnet scheme for what is called subnet A and subnet B, and also how to figure out the IP addressing scheme in this block that you see before you. I'm now ready to move on to the second part, which is to configure IP version 4 and IP and the different settings on these machines. Let's go ahead and talk about how to do that. The first thing we need to do is actually physically connect them. So looking at this packet tracer instruction right here, we're going to go ahead and do that. So let me walk through how to do that. So we've got our diagram right here, and what I'm going to do is move this up here a little bit so we can see it better. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and physically connect the PC1 to the fast Ethernet 01 on the switch. So we got to go down here to this lightning bolt, and we got to choose a copper straight through cable. Click on PC1, choose fast Ethernet 0, then go over to Sales SW1 and choose fast Ethernet 01, and that connects that correctly. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing on PC2. We're going to grab a copper straight through cable, click on PC2, choose fast Ethernet 0, go over to SW2, and we're also going to select fast Ethernet 01. So now the PCs are connected. Now we want to connect the branch RT router to both switches. So we're going to click the copper straight through cable, click on branch RT router. We're going to choose gigabit Ethernet 00. And we're going to go over here to Sales S1, and we're going to choose gigabit Ethernet 1/1. Like that. Then we're going to go to same thing on this side. I'm going to choose Giga Ethernet 0/1, and I'm going to choose gigabit Ethernet 1/1 on that switch. So now I have physically connected them correctly. Okay, moving on. We now we want to move on to the second step, which is to configure the host computers. So we're going to program the appropriate IP addressing in for the host machines. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to open up PC1, and I'm going to click on the desktop tab and choose IP configuration, because that's where we're going to start. So I'm starting there. I'm going to choose static, which is the way it is, and I'm going to go ahead and type in the IP address designed for PC1. In that particular example, this will be 172.22.4.2, and the subnet mask will be 255.255.255.224, and the default gateway will be 172.22.4.1. The DNS server will be the server address that we talked about before. And let's go ahead and take a look at what that was. I think I told you in the instructions. Yep, 172.22.0.2. That is listed right there in the instructions. So that's how you set up PC1. So I'm going to close that, and PC1 should adjust there. Okay, now let's click on PC2. Click on the desktop tab, go to IP configuration, and you're going to type in the IP address information for PC2. So PC2 will be 172.22.4.34, and the subnet mask will be 255.255.255.248. Notice the mask change. This is a different mask. 172.22.4.33 will be the gateway, and the DNS server will be the same, which will be 172.22.0.2. So you basically take the IP subnet mask default gateway that you configured in that table in part 1, and you put it in the static IP configuration settings for both PC1 and PC2. That completes that exercise. So now we've assigned the machines. Step 3, we now are ready to configure the branch RT router. So let's go ahead and go through this. You click on the branch RT router, and you're going to open up the command line interface. You're at the router prompt, so you're going to type enable. That takes you to the router prompt. there's several things that you want to do. The first thing it wants you to do is disable DNS lookups. So the way you do that is you go to config T, and basically this is a no command. So you can type no IP domain and notice it's no IP domain dash lookup, just like that. Notice how I use the question mark and tab completion to help me remember what it was, and that's what you should do during the test if you can't exactly remember what to type. So that's how you disable DNS lookup, is with the command no IP domain lookup. The next, you want to change the router's host name. You do that with the host name command, and you simply type it exactly as it wants to be seen, branch-RT, and that's how you change the host name. They also want to change the domain name. The command for doing that is IP domain name, and then you're going to type in corp.prvt. Pretty simple command. We now are ready to change the encrypted password, the encrypted privilege password. To do that, you type enable secret. That means it's encrypted. And you're going to type Cisco npass is what the instructions required. Now you're ready to change your console password. So to do that, you're going to do line con 0. So we're going to change console port 0. And first you set the password. In this case, it wants Cisco VTY pass. And then you need to type the login command after you're done. And that's how you set the telnet password. The console password, sorry. Now we're ready to set the telnet password. So I'm going to type exit to take me out of that mode back to configuration mode. And we're ready to configure the telnet password. So do line VTY. And if you do a question mark, you can see how many there are. In this case, it's 0 through 15. So I'm going to do 0, 15. We're going to type password. And in this case, they wanted Cisco VTY pass. And then I'm going to type login to turn that on. Now, normally you just type login, but in this particular case, it wants you to set login on VTY lines to use the local database. So in this case, you'll type in login local, and that's what enables that command. Pretty easy to do. Okay, so now we're ready to set the. We're going to exit out of VTY configuration mode back to config. And what we're going to do now is we're going to set the minimum password length for passwords to be 10. So to do that, you're going to do security, passwords, minimum length 10. And that's how you require the minimum length passwords to be 10. The next thing it wants you to do is set up an administrative user in the local database. So in order to do that, you simply use the username command. So you can type username admin, and then you type a secret admin 1 pass, and that's how you set up a local user in the local user database. Okay, so that's how you do all of those type of things. One more thing it wants you to do is all of your passwords have now are left plain text in the config file. So if you'd like to encrypt all the passwords, you type the command service password encryption. Oops. And that encrypts all the passwords in the running config. Okay. Next thing it wants you to do is configure a banner. Banners are really easy. You're going to type banner, MOTD for message of the day, and then you're going to put some character. I like to use a £. And then you need to simply type the word warning in here, making sure the W is capital. Hit enter and then do your £, again, and that's basically how you do that. That's how you set the banner. Now we're ready to set the appropriate IP addresses on interface G00. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to type interface G0/0. We're now in that interface. So we're going to type, first we want to do a description. So I'm going to type description, and I'm going to type connected to sales. Just type it exactly like that. Now I'm going to put an IP address on that. So I'm going to type IP address. And in this case, my IP address needs to be 172.22.4.1. And the mask is 255.255.255.224. All right, that's how you set the IP address. I believe that's all we want to do on that. So now we need to type no shut for no shutdown. And that's how you do that. I'm going to exit out of that. So now I'm ready to go into the next interface. So I'm going to type interface G0/1. And I'm now in that interface. I'm going to type description. And this one I would type connected to support. And I'm going to give this one an IP address as well. In this case, it's 172.22.4.33. And this one has a different mask, the one we decided in part 1. Oops, 248. And let me see if I got that right. Don't want any typos. I think I got it right. Now I'm going to type no shutdown. I'm going to bring that interface up. I'll exit out of interface mode. I'm back there. So now my two interfaces have been configured. The last thing it wanted you to do was to create, in case we wanted to use SSH to generate an RSA crypto. So to do that, you type show. So in order to do that, we're going to type crypto and then key generate, and then we're going to type RSA. It's going to ask you for what modulus you want. To get this correct, you must type 1024, and now you've generated it. Now that if we wanted to assign an interface to use SSH, if we wanted to create an SSH login, we could do so. That is if we wanted to do that. Okay. So let me just show you what we could do then is we'll go. In fact, you need to do this. So now that we've done that, created that, I'll show you how you could allow for SSH and for Telnet. Right now, we're just allowing for Telnet, but we could allow for SSH if we did line VTY 015. And notice it even says SSH has been enabled. Do you see that? And now we want to allow SSH to log on to here. So the command for to do that would be transport input all. If you do a question mark, you can see that you can take SSH, Telnet, none, or all. And I'm going to say all. So transport input all makes that possible. There you go. That's it. That's how you configure the router. Good job. I'm going to type exit and then exit again. And now I can type copy, run, start when I'm back at the pound sign and hit enter. Now I've saved my changes. Router configuration is done. Now we're ready to configure both switches. So I'll first open up sales switch SW1, go to the command line, hit enter, and I'm going to type enable. Now we don't have to do very much on these. We just have to do a couple things. First off, we go to config T, and we're going to type the host name. So host name, sales-SW1, and that configures the host name. We want to configure the IP version 4 address on the switch. So remember, we were supposed to give the switch an address on one of its VLANs. So in this case, we're going to set that up for VLAN 1. So to do that, we'll type interface VLAN 1. That takes us into interface VLAN 1. We're going to type IP address. And here's where we type 172.22.4.30 and put in the correct mask, which in this case is 224. We're now going to do no shut on that interface to bring the interface up. And then we're going to exit out of the interface. Now we want to give it a default gateway, which is what we will do. So IP default gateway, and we're going to type in the gateway, which should be the router's interface, which will be 172.22.4.1. We've now set up an IP default gateway. Very good. So we've basically activated the interface, we've assigned it an address, and we've also configured a default gateway. Now we're ready to do the encrypted password. Very simple. Enable secret, and we're going to do Cisco npass, just as it asked us to do. And we're going to set up our console password, line con 0, and we will type password Cisco con pass. we'll type, after we're done with that, we'll do login. And then we will do telnet passwords, line v. Oh, actually, just to help you understand it, you probably want to exit first, just so you keep your head straight. Line VTY, and then do a question mark, and you can see that it's 015, just like that, right? So we will go ahead and now type password, Cisco VTY pass, and login. All right, there you go. So I've created a console password and a telnet password. I'm going to exit again, and I'm back to the # mode, copy, run, start to save my changes. Okay, that is basically how you configure Sales S1. And I'm going to click now to support SW2, and we're just simply going to repeat what we just did. So I'm going to go to enable. The only thing that would change here, of course, is the host name and the IP address. So I'm going to go to config T. First, I will change the host name to sales-sw1. Then I'm going to go to interface VLAN 1. Oops. And I'm going to type IP address. And this is SW2, right? 172.22.4.38. And I'm going to type in 255.255.255.248. Hit enter. That configures that. I'll do a no shut to bring that interface up. And now I'm going to exit back to config mode. And now I can do my IP default gateway. And this is going to be the IP address of the router in subnet B, which is 172.22.4.33. That sets up the default gateway. Now I'm ready to configure my passwords. So I'm going to do enable secret, and then I will simply type Cisco npass. And now I'm ready to do my console password, line con 0. I will do password Cisco conpass and login. And I'll do line VTY. Oops. Exit first so you can see all your commands. Line VTY. And I'll do 015. Password. And I will type Cisco VTY pass. Login. And there we go. We've set the telnet password. So now I'm going to exit. Exit. And once I'm back to privilege mode, I'll do copy, run, start. I've now saved my changes. When you're done with all of that, you should be about 80% done with the assignment. The rest of the remaining stuff is to do the IP version 6 configuration. So let's go ahead and now move on to the IP version 6. Okay. So in order to do that, it's not too difficult to do. So what we're going to do we're going to first assign the configuration to PC1 and PC2. So just give me a minute on that. Okay, it wants us to assign the first and the second address in these two networks. So we need to make sure we understand the first address and the second address is for and get those done correctly. So let's just make sure we got that all set up. Let me make sure I've got that all ready to go. I think I do. Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to now do is we're going to go to PC1, we'll start there, and you're going to go to IP configuration, and we're going to configure IP version 6 address. In order to do that, we need to make sure we understand what the address was. In this case, we know that it is this address right here. That's what we were given in the instructions. And this wants us the second available IP address, and this is on a /64. The gateway will then be the first address, and I don't think we need to, don't even program the IP version 6 DNS server. We're not going to do that in this exercise. You don't need to. So we have the gateway and those are both in the same IP version 6 subnet. That is very correct. So we're going to close that now and close that one, and that should configure PC1. Now we'll open up PC2. Go to IP configuration. You got your IP version 6 address. In this case, we're going to type in, we're going to put in the B IP version 6 network, and this in IP address 2 on a /64, and the gateway in this case will be 1. There we go. That's how you do the IP configuration on PC2. I'm going to close that, and there we go. We've now done PC1 and PC2. We're now ready to configure the addresses appropriately on the routing device. So we want to use configure G00 and G01 to use the first address in the A and the B subnet, and also assign the local link address. So we're going to open up branch RT router, and we're going to be in the config mode. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll go to config T. You'll type interface G0/0, and here's where we're going to type the IP version 6 address, IPv6, and if you do a question mark, you can see what the commands are. So IP version 6 address is the command, and I'm going to do the first address in that with a /64, and there we go. It tells you to assign the link local address to FE801, and then after you type the address in, then you'll type link-local. That sets that up correctly. Now it has two IPv6 addresses. It has the global address and the link local address. So that is how you configure router the interface G00 properly. Now let's exit out of there. Go to interface G0/1, and let's repeat the process. You're going to type IPv6 address, and now you're going to type the B network, and then you're going to do /64 at the end. That is going to set that up as the global address on that interface. And then you're going to do the same thing we did before. You're going to type IPv6 FE801 link local. That sets up the global address and the link local address. Okay? That's pretty much it. That's pretty much how to do that. I think we've accomplished most of the IPv6 stuff. Just make sure that is true. I think it is. I'm looking at the instructions. Yes, we've configured all of that. So we have done that properly. So now we're going to go ahead and exit out of there. Exit out of there. And I'm going to do copy, run, start. Now, the last thing it wants to do is load up the branch RT config to a TFTP server. So what you're going to do is you're going to do copy, run, TFTP, and you'll type 172.22.0.4. Hit enter. Just leave the name of the file the way it is. Hit enter, and it's going to copy the file up to the TFTP server. That is, of course, you did all your configurations correctly. If you got this far, then it is worked. Okay.